Welcome to the IREAD Parent Overview video. My name is Carrie Quaintance. I'm the instructional coach at J.R. Watson Elementary, and my goal with today's video is to educate families about what IREAD is, what that means for your child, and ways that you can help at home. So let's go ahead and talk about what IREAD is. Well, this is a standardized test that is mandated by our state, and this test focuses completely on foundational reading skills. So where your child might take iLearn in the future, where they are tested for math, science, or social studies, the IREAD test focuses completely on reading. This test is given to second and third grade students throughout the state. So we have noticed in the past that it is very essential for families and educators to work together to support our young learners, not only in their educational career, but also particularly for the IREAD tests. We have found that families that help their students at home and are in close contact with teachers about where their students are performing are the students that pass with the greatest frequency. So there have been some recent changes to the IREAD law in the state of Indiana. The first change is that now all second grade students are mandated to take the test. So this is a third grade level test, so we're certainly not expecting every second grade student to pass a third grade level test. So second graders will get one of three scores when they take this test in March. They will either pass, and if they pass, they're finished. They don't have to retake it ever again. They might get a score of on track, meaning they're close enough to passing, they're on track that the state is predicting by the time that they're in third grade with further reading instruction that they will pass. Or they're going to be getting a score called at risk. So students who are at risk, if they're not already receiving targeted reading interventions, they will receive them at that time. And they will also be invited to participate in summer school. During the summer, this session is usually between 2 and 3 weeks long, and students will receive some intense reading instruction during summer school. So for third grade, if students do not pass as a second grader, they will retest again in March, and this time they receive one of two scores. They receive a pass, and if they pass, they don't ever have to take it again, or they receive a score of did not pass. So the students that did not pass in second grade are already getting interventions within their third grade classroom. But if for some crazy reason they weren't receiving targeted interventions, maybe they're new to our school, they will get them at that time. They'll also have an opportunity to test again in May of that year. If the students in third grade do not pass at the end of May, they are invited to summer school. Again, this is optional, but they'll have another opportunity to retest at the end of summer school. So here's the big change. As of last year, students who do not pass at the end of that summer school window, they will be retained in third grade. Unless they can get something called a good cause exemption. So there are certain students that the state says are eligible for these good cause exemption. This exemption allows a student to not be retained in third grade, but to move on to fourth grade, but it still requires them to take the IREAD test twice a year until they pass or they reach the seventh grade. So here would be some students that could qualify for a good cause exemption. For example, if a student has previously been retained in third grade, they could get a good cause exemption. That would allow them to go to fourth grade, but they still would have to take that IREAD test until they pass it or until they're in seventh grade. If a student has an intellectual disability or a student has an academic IEP and the case conference committee at one of their meetings determines that that student should go on to fourth grade, they can receive a good cause exemption. If a student is an English learner and they have been receiving services for less than 2 years, they could also receive a good cause exemption. Also, any student who scores a proficient or above proficient score on the third grade iLearn math test could qualify for a good cause exemption. And finally, any student who has received 2 or more years of intensive reading interventions, you can talk to me about whether your child is one of those, and was retained more than once during kindergarten, first grade, or second grade could qualify for a good cause exemption. So if you have questions about that, at the end of third grade, if your child hasn't passed, let your classroom teacher know or contact me and I can kind of talk you through that. So here are some school supports that have been offered through our district. First of all, we give a universal screener to all kindergarten, first, and second grade students. And we use that screener to look for reading difficulties that could be related to dyslexia. Once we have a student that is flagged, we provide reading interventions for that student from the classroom teacher or a trained interventionist. There are multiple opportunities for students to take IREAD. They'll take it in second grade, and then March of third grade, May of third grade, and if they go to summer school, the end of the summer school window. So they will actually have 4 attempts to pass this test before you would consider any type of retention. We are also offering summer school for any students who do not pass IREAD in March or May for second and third grade. Also, our teachers and our interventionists have been trained in the science of reading strategies, so they know the best ways to teach your child how to read, and they also know the best ways how to teach our struggling learners how to read. In grades K through 5, we have classroom interventions. So we have these interventions in every single grade level. Students meet in small group with either a teacher or an interventionist, and they have targeted skill practice based on their particular needs. So any students who don't pass IREAD in second, as soon as they move into third grade, if they haven't been receiving those interventions, they're going to get them during the school day in third grade. You can check with your child's teacher whether your child is receiving interventions or not. We also do a lot of progress monitoring at the elementary level. We monitor our entire school population, the beginning, middle, and end of year. We give them assessments, tests to see where they're at in reading and math. And if we need to provide any additional instruction, we make sure that we get that into place. Also, we might progress monitor students more frequently if we're more concerned. So if we notice that a student is having a particular reading deficit, we might progress monitor them more frequently, once a month or even once a week. That way we can target their growth and see if they're making enough growth or see what changes we need to make. Also, students are getting some whole class IREAD practice. Teachers are providing these practice opportunities for students, mostly so that they can understand the formatting of the test, what types of questions that they might see, so they're familiar with what they see, because we know that these little ones, not only do they need to bring those reading skills, but being able to be familiar with the test and the types of questions are incredibly helpful to get them to pass that IREAD test. So how can you help at home? So the number one thing, most important thing that you can do is read with your child at home. 30 minutes a day is ideal, but really any time that you can spare is helpful. You need to find a quiet place at home to sit with no distractions, no screens, no TV, no cell phones for mom or dad, no devices, everything's off. And then there's 3 really good options for you. You can sit with your child and you can read to them. You can sit with your child and read with them, or you can sit with your child and listen to them read. There's a lot of research that says that all of those parts in our brain that are language-based are connected. So when we are reading to a child and they're hearing us read, it boosts their own individual reading skills. When we're talking to children about books, that boosts their reading skills. So all of those things that are kind of fun for parents and kids actually help their reading. So let's talk a little bit of a deeper dive into how to do those 3 things. So if you're reading with your child, the goal is to really have conversations as you're reading, as you're building that background knowledge. Maybe your child has never been camping before and there's a scene in the book where a child goes camping. You could kind of talk them through the different things that might be needed for camping to just increase their background knowledge. This also increases oral language and strengthens those vocabulary words. So as you're reading new words, and if you come to a word that you're like, I'm not sure if my child knows that, tell them what it means. Talk about the word, talk about where they might see that word in their own environment or where they may have experienced that word before. The biggest thing is that you're stopping every so often and you're talking, you're sharing your thoughts, your questions, your predictions, you're summarizing. So every so often you're stopping and you're kind of restating what has happened, or you're guessing what might happen next, and involve your child in that. Chapter books are great for this. Picture books are good too, but chapter books are great because they allow for a lot more conversation. You have to hold a lot of those mental images in your head. And a goal would be maybe to read a chapter a day. to kind of keep your child interested. Reading with your child is another option. So this time you're sharing the reading responsibility. You're the model and your child is practicing their own reading skills. So you could do this several ways. You could model reading a selection and have your child read it back to you. You could take turns reading a section, or you could even read out loud at the same time. And then doing some of those same skills, stopping, talking, summarizing, talking about breaking words up and sounding the words out as you read. Or even as a parent, intentionally making a mistake and seeing if your child notices that mistake and showing them how to reread are all great strategies. The third strategy is listening to your child read. So this allows students to practice reading out loud, and then the parent kind of helps as needed. So if a child is struggling, helping them sound out words. If they make mistakes that don't make sense, repeat what they said and have them reread. So I see this all the time with kids. They're so smart, they're reading along, and sometimes they insert a word that's not exactly the word that was written, but it makes sense in the story. Allow them to keep reading. Their brain has already fixed that and has made that correct meaning in their mind. Allow them to keep going. However, if they make a mistake that doesn't really make sense, repeat what they said and then have them reread it and help them kind of figure out that error that they made. And then again, continuing to talk about the story, asking questions, summarizing what was read, and talking about what you are wondering about. And then also celebrating your child as a reader, encouraging them, noticing when they're doing things better, and then also talking about print in the environment. If you go to the doctor's office and you're filling out a form, have your child help you fill that out. Help them read different sections to you so they see that connection between reading and real life. All of those talking skills and those questioning skills will boost their part of their brain that helps them when they do their own reading. So I really want to thank you for supporting your child's education. Thank you so much for watching this video and looking at some of the other resources that were sent. I really want you to know that all of us at Watson want to partner with you, and we are on the same team in making your child be as successful as we can possibly make them be. If you have further questions, the best place for you to reach out, best person is your child's teacher. You can get some information about the testing process, and then your own child's needs. And then if you have further questions, you can also contact me here at Watson. Thank you.